Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 25 of Dirtmasters, the review series for the real rally cars of Gran Turismo 6. And in this episode we're featuring the second of the two Celica rally car models that are featured on Gran Turismo. This is the ST185 shaped Celica, which is the older of the two. So let's see how it compares to the other Celica, the other WRC machines, and also the other rally cars in general. Now, in terms of pure power and straight line performance, this Celica is pretty much on level ground with most of the other WRC cars, but it does actually have slightly less power than some of the other WRCs when fully tuned. So for acceleration, I'm going to give this particular Celica a 3 out of 5, which isn't bad, but it's nothing special either. And for low speed handling, I'm going to give it a 4, because although the handling definitely isn't bad, it's not class leading either. It does have some weight to it, which is good in certain circumstances, but not necessarily for city tracks. And for city tracks overall, I'm going to give it a 3. And not because it's necessarily bad to drive on a city track, but just because it does fall behind its opponents in terms of sheer lap times. So now let's see how it takes on a country track. Now, although it's still far from being the quickest of rally cars on the game, the Celica does definitely feel better on a track such as this than it does on a city track. It gives it a chance to use its high performance handling and to really use its high speed nimbleness in general. Now, for high speed handling, I am going to give this Celica a 5 because it is better the faster you go. And for country tracks in general, I'm going to give it a 4, which is a better result than on city tracks, but still not a perfect rating. And the reason for that is because although it feels good to drive, it is again not the quickest of rally cars. It's far from it, in fact, and that does unfortunately just stop it from getting the maximum 5. For overall drivability though, I am actually going to give this car a 5 because it is very easy to drive, very forgiving and very beginner friendly due to not having as much power. So that's it for a country track. Now let's see how it starts to handle tracks such as dirt and snow. Now, although it's still not necessarily as quick as its rivals, the Celica does definitely have its advantages on tracks such as dirt, because it is very, very easy to drive. It's very easy to get a counterbalance on this car around corners. The grip is the perfect amount, especially for rally drivers with less experience, and overall it does feel very good on dirt tracks. Now, for dirt tracks, again, I'm going to give it a 4, and I'd love to give it a 5, and in terms of pure handling, I would give it a 5, but unfortunately I'm not able to do so for the same reason as on country tracks, and that is it's just not fast enough. It's not slow, it's far from being the slowest, but it's a good 5 to 7 seconds behind many of the better rally cars, and I'm not just talking things like the Suzuki Escudo, that's even things like the Focus and the Lancer Evo. So a mixed result so far for this car, good in terms of driving performance, in terms of handling, drivability, grip, etc., but not necessarily so good on the speed side of things. But can it claw back a point on a snow track? Well, let's go to Chamonix and find out. Now, on snow tracks, the Celica does definitely start to feel better. It feels very good on dirt tracks, but the advantage for it on snow tracks is not only does the handling feel good, but it's also quicker. Now, it's still far from being the quickest, but it is closer behind the quicker rally cars on this track than it was on a dirt track. As we mentioned, on our dirt track, it was around 5 to 7 seconds behind the best of this series. But on this track, it's only around 3 or 4 seconds behind those cars. So again, not the fastest, but for its power, which as we said at the start of the video is significantly less than many of those cars, it does perform very well. And the best thing about this car is just how easy its performance is to use. So that's it for our actual track testing. Now let's go finally back to the garage for a roundup of its best and worst points. Overall then, the Celica is both a good and not so good rally car. Good in as much as it's very easy to drive, it's perfect for beginners, it has very forgiving handling, and it has the perfect amount of grip, weight displacement, etc. But not so good in as much as its sheer power does let it down. It's not as quick as even some of the more basic of newer or sometimes even older rally cars. Which is a shame because this car has potential to be one of the best, but its straight line performance does let it down, so much so that it just falls too far behind its rivals on most of our track types. As far as its pure best and worst points, I would say this car's best point is just how easy its performance is to use. It's, as I said, very grippy, very forgiving, and perfect for less experienced drivers. Its worst point is, well, we just mentioned it really, it's just not quick enough overall to be competitive at the top level of rallying. Now overall, who would I recommend it for? Well, primarily, as I said, people who are less experienced. People who are more experienced with rallying could still use the car to their advantage, but overall, there's no real significant advantage to this car for a more experienced driver, because for the money, which it is reasonably affordable at 350,000 credits, there are better cars which you can get for that money, or sometimes even less. So overall, it's a mixed result for the Celica. Certainly not a bad car, but just not quite quick enough. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.